What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone's having a fantastic evening, fantastic afternoon, fantastic pre-noon, no matter where you are in the world. I'm Hassan Piker, and this is the HasanDaily broadcast, coming to you live from sunny California, Los Angeles, folks. We're live and alive, and I hope all the boys, girls, and MBs are having a fantastic one, because today's a beautiful day. Today's a wonderful day. Today is Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday fun day. That's right. I talked about this briefly yesterday. Andrew Tate says, let me make this loud and clear. If you're a straight man with a girlfriend in 2024, you're gay. Lots of people, for good reason, baffled by this, but I watched Nick Fuentes explain why they all say this now, and it's because they think modern dating practices are feminine and think that women should submit to marriage almost immediately as a proxy argument for trad wifery. I don't think that that's the case. I mean, that's part of it, but I also think that the initial assessment of these guys are preying on the vulnerable youth, the vulnerable and insecure young men, in an effort to string them along and basically force them to alienation from every other person in their lives until the only reliable source of news and community comes from, the men's rights spaces that they operate in. That is what their goal is. Predatory people identify vulnerable members of the community, and they work tirelessly to separate them from their friends and family, and they constantly feed them a bunch of nonsense and tell them, like, the only way that you can actually win favors, or the only way that you can achieve your goals, is if you actually succeed within this community. And slowly but surely they isolate them further and further from normal people. And then the less normal these guys become, their sense of normalcy comes from operating within these communities, and the community has its own internalized metrics of success, and people just like operate within those confines. And ironically enough, they move further and further away from normalcy in that process, and it makes it virtually impossible for them to ever have a healthy attitude about interpersonal relationship and communications ever again. And it makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult to snap them out of it the further they go down that rabbit hole. Bradley Martyn is full tilt, getting radicalized, and is like hanging out with Nick Fuentes. Is devastating situation. Directly a consequence of Israel shit, by the way. Like, I watched it unfold in real time. Let that be a lesson for all of you. Pro-Trump guy thinks Donald Trump is sincerely going to end all wars, realizes that Donald Trump is deeply invested in Israel, and starts going, what the fuck's going on here? Like, these guys are, maybe these guys are not so wrong about what they're saying about Israel, and then they move on from Israel to, maybe these guys are not so wrong about what they're saying about Jews in general. Pair that up with the notion that this environment of censorship, this environment of enforced censorship, is actually at the behest of Jews, right? Which again is not my assessment, but it is the way that a lot of these traditional media outlets basically communicate the exact same thing that fucking Nick Fuentes is communicating when they say Israel is for the Jews and all Jews love Israel, and if you speak out against Israel, you're anti-Semitic, and if you're anti-Semitic, you must be censored and you must be fucking cast aside. And people basically put those puzzle pieces together, and of course, at the end of that is being open-minded towards whatever the fuck rabid anti-Semites are saying, open neo-Nazis are saying. Also proves your point that this kind of bigotry and racism is more attractive to right-leaning people than your anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist message. No, I think that if you're an anti-imperialist and an anti-Zionist, and you are fighting hard to communicate this message to people, and your worldview revolves around materialist analysis, it is always going to be an uphill struggle in a country like the United States of America. Why do you keep giving Bradley charitability when he keeps doing things like this? I think you're completely unable to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. You have to stop doing this. This is so stupid. This is not about charitability at all. This is just a straightforward analysis of how people end up finding themselves in, Nick Fuentes' worldview. I don't think they're serious, though. I don't know. No, I think that there are a lot of people who are serious about that, where they just like, they don't understand that you can engage in analysis, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that you're endorsing people. Everybody does that, actually. It's a like I said, it's filter. It's a filter for a lot of people who are not invested in serious thinking or critical analysis whatsoever. These are the dangers of liberalism and liberal thinking, where it's like anti-materialist, and it also is openly antagonistic towards socialism and materialist analysis in general. So unless you go to college basically and take like sociology courses or whatever, you're never going to encounter this worldview unless you find yourself by sheer happenstance in this broadcast somehow, and you have a level of charitability, and you're like, okay, maybe I think I understand where this guy's coming from. But ultimately, because both liberals and the entirety of the right wing are antagonistic to socialism and leftists in general, and to varying degrees, they are openly express their animosity. It basically shuts off people from seeing that kind of seeing the world with that lens, with that framework, with that perspective. It's not helpful that there's also an openly anti-intellectualist slant on the right as well, and somewhat of an anti-intellectualist slant, I would say, in the liberal side too, especially when it comes to thought-eliminating cliches that they deploy whenever they want to justify American imperialism or war or whatever, right? That is why this environment, this information environment, this information landscape is so perfect for fascists to take advantage of. Like, one of the easiest ways to identify this is like someone like BARI WEISS, right? BARI WEISS are many pro-Israel people that position themselves as like liberals or centrists or center-right or whatever the fuck, will oftentimes look to someone like myself and look to someone like NICK FUENTES and say, oh, from my reasonable, moderate, centrist position, there is no difference between NICK FUENTES and Hasan Piker. And what they fail to recognize is that doesn't actually make me look bad. That makes NICK FUENTES seem like a more normal figure in American politics. So if you actually do care about anti-Semitism, but you end up bracketing off anyone that is anti-Israel with the same like anti-Semitic, Holocaust revisionist, Holocaust denying brush, then what you're ultimately doing is you're saying, well, if you have any sort of anti-Israel thoughts in your mind, or if you express any sort of anti-Israel sentiment, you're an anti-Semite. And it makes people go, okay, well, I am anti-Israel, so maybe I am anti-Semitic. The left does a dogshit job of combating Zionists and Zionism, which leads to normies not understanding why/how Israel does what it does. No, I don't think so. I think the left has done a pretty remarkable job of combating Zionism. I think it's actually crazy to say that at this very moment, especially considering that the attitude against Israel, in spite of decades and decades of multi-billion-dollar propaganda and influence peddling operation, it has completely failed. And the overarching sentiment is anti-Israel, even in the United States of America, one of the most heavily propagandized countries on the planet. So I think that they've done a fantastic job. The left has done a fantastic job. The issue is there are still always going to be people that take advantage of the domineering narrative when Jake Tapper and NICK FUENTES are saying the same thing, which is all Jews care about is Israel, and Israel is the Jewish state. Israel must remain the Jewish state. And if you actually criticize Israel, then you're anti-Jew. Because both Jake Tapper and numerous other liberal figures say this exact same thing. And NICK FUENTES says it as well. So if everyone is saying that, then people are obviously going to understand that is the reality. They're going to think that is the reality. That is what is being communicated from liberal outlets. The difference, of course, between NICK FUENTES and Jake Tapper is that NICK FUENTES says that and then says this is a bad thing. It's a bad thing that Israel is for the Jews and all Jews care about is Israel, whereas Jake Tapper is saying that's a good thing. He uses that as a defensive position, right? And for the longest time, due to how controlled the media narratives were when it came down to issues that are pertinent to American State Department goals, that worked. There was an environment of suppression. There was an environment of self-censorship. I myself have engaged in that self-censorship in an effort to make sure that I don't get fucking censored or dominated or lose my platform. Having said that, however, now that people actually recognize that Israel is a criminal enterprise, and an evil country that is doing a metric ton of violence and also is doing its very best to dominate the lives of everyday Americans and control flows of information in the United States of America, all of a sudden people have a negative opinion on Israel. So now they're leaning in the NICK FUENTES direction. But ultimately, everyone has been taught in the United States of America that no matter what, Israel's for the Jews, all Jews are Zionists, all Jews care about is Israel, and that if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. If that's what liberals are saying and that's what the Nazis are saying, why the fuck would any normal person ever encounter my position that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are totally separate things, and that in many instances, anti-Semites are unironically utilizing anti-Zionist rhetoric to dominate the discourse and take advantage of the discourse to present an anti-Jewish slant, an anti-Jewish sentiment, and foment anti-Semitic opinions. The point is, for years and years, these dumb dipshits kept saying anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and now that anti-Zionism is the norm, it has made anti-Semitism the norm. That's the simplest, most reductive way to put it. The point is, Jews are not a monolithic group of people, just like no one is actually a monolithic group of people. They don't have a monolithic understanding. If they did, there wouldn't be billions of dollars poured into trying to break the minds of young American Jews and turn them into wonderful, loyal soldiers for Israel. Okay, if that was the case, birthright wouldn't exist, right? They wouldn't have to do birthright. Automatically, every Jew would be growing up as a ultra Zionist from the start. There would be no such thing as an anti-Zionist Jew. It doesn't work that way, right? The problem is there are plenty of Zionist Jews that turn around and say, no, you don't understand. If you're criticizing Israel, you're criticizing Zionism. If you're saying you're anti-Zionist, you're criticizing all Jews because all Jews are Zionists. Well, you're a fucking idiot for saying that. Not only is it untrue, but you're also a fucking moron for saying that, because everybody that hears that goes, okay, I guess I'm anti-Semitic then. Like, people don't understand how quick that turn is for people, especially once they, decided Israel is bad, once they realize that Israel is bad. Sarah HURWITZ literally is a speechwriter for the Obama team, okay? She wrote many of Michelle Obama's speeches. She is a liberal in every sense of the word, but she's also incredibly pro-Israel. She is a prominent Jewish person in American politics, right? So when you hear her say shit like this, what the fuck is the expectation from the average cornbread Iowan who has never really encountered a Jewish person? They hear stuff like this and they basically go, oh, okay, so I guess Jews do control the media. I guess Jews do control the banking industry. And I guess Jews are, dominating American politics.
I sometimes get this weird gaslighting where people say, oh, okay, Sarah, you're saying that college kids can't criticize Israel. Well, look at you censoring free speech. I'm like, I would love people to be criticizing Israel. I would love them to be having a debate. But,
no, you won't.
From water to water, Palestine shall be Arab. That's not criticism any more than from water to water, Israel shall be Jewish is criticism. It's illuminationism. It's that's not.
Yeah. Liberal Zionism and the extent of liberal Zionism, which is totally avoiding that is what Israel is doing currently. Water to water, all that will be Jewish is literally the Likud charter. And what Benjamin Netanyahu has time and time again said is the initiation of the Eretz Israel, Greater Israel Project. New former Obama speechwriter Sarah HURWITZ says she went looking for Israel's original sin and came up empty.
I felt a lot of anxiety about Israel. It seems so complicated. And I hate to say this now, but I think on some deep level, I had a feeling that there was something probably fundamentally problematic about Israel's founding and existence that if I did enough research, I would discover and I would not be able to defend. As I did the research, I was like, you know what Israel is, Dan? Okay, I'm going to say something shocking and wild. Brace yourself. It's a country. It's a country. It was founded like so many other countries in the mid-20th century. Countries founded in war, partition, bloodshed. I'm sorry, it's not pretty. I really wish it had, come about in unicorns and moonbeams. That would have been beautiful. I mean, look, this is how a lot of nation creation came about in the mid-20th century in the wake of World Wars I and II. Countries were partitioned, divided up, and in ways that were, I think, problematic in many ways. I'm not saying this is wonderful and great, but I think what struck me is that so often I think we educate our young people to think that Israel is exceptional. It's unlike any other nation, but it's actually completely unexceptional in its founding. And I think we have done a huge disservice to our young people.
Every country does genocide, guys. It's just how it is, except this one is doing it right now and also doing it with unlimited funds from the United States of America. So what's the problem? Well, that's the problem. It's happening currently in real time and we can see it, especially after reading endless amounts of books about how wrong that shit is, ironically enough, partially as a consequence of all the Holocaust education, which is something that she also personally recognizes. Because remember, the whole Sarah HURWITZ saga started when she openly stated that a big problem with Holocaust education was that it was very successful in early on in terms of defending Israel's existence. But then people started seeing Israel doing a Holocaust and were like, well, isn't this kind of the whole point of never again? And she's like, oh, no, it's bad now. That's the reason why everybody knows who the fuck Sarah Hurwitz is, because she went viral for that take. She said the quiet part out loud.
When we have failed to educate them about how Israel is a country, and we have failed to normalize Israel for our young people, we have failed to say, like, here's a bunch of really unpleasant facts about how Israel was founded. And also, those same facts apply to these other many, many countries. Let's go through those as well. You know, I wish every young person could understand that, yeah, there's some really tough, hard stuff in Israel's founding, as there was in the founding of many other countries at the time.
Also, there are certain things that Israel is doing that's just like not something that happens now. You know what I mean? Or has happened in history books that people genuinely consider to be disgusting. You can't have a liberal society and have liberalism be in defense of like individual rights, whether it be, you know, private property rights, but also individual rights of like, equality and civil liberties, and then also maintain a fucking apartheid state. Like, you just can't do that. Like, you cannot have a country that's foundation is ethnic cleansing and a apartheid state, and then expect Americans who learned throughout history that apartheid was inappropriate and unacceptable throughout their own fucking history, as a matter of fact. Jim Crow, separate but equal arguments no longer work in America, because Americans, whether there are still existing racial wounds and racial inequities in this country, Americans by and large assume that, you know, Jim Crow is a thing of the fucking past, and that it's not good. It's a bad thing, right? So unless you teach Americans that there is a racial hierarchy, which is illiberal in general, and you consistently hammer in that point that, some races are better than others, some religions are better than others, and they must be dominant and blah, blah, blah. Like, unless that is your new meta, you're just not going to be able to get them on board with a country that still has this old school construct that many Americans consider to be inappropriate.